I'm Jim Check. You're watching KelownaNow. I'm here with Dr.
Tom Warshawski.
I was going to say Tom Warshawski.
Yeah, it's good.
It's a good name, right?
Yeah. Simple little Polish name.
And you're here talking about climate change and how Kelowna, the city of Kelowna, could do better.
Exactly. So Kelowna, and I just want to sort of situate this for I guess, your listeners, Jim, and because you know this already, but climate change is a reality. It's happening. And it's actually...
The wildfires tell us that. Like, you just have to, you know what I mean? Like, in the Okanagan, wildfires is a big thing for us, right? And we're getting them more and more frequent.
Right. So the heat dome comes first, the heat. Lack of relative humidity, the drought. Yeah. Puts it all kindling, erupts into fire. Yeah. We got the smoke, we lose our grapes, all sorts of things. So it's here, it's a reality. And it actually, Kelowna is more hardly hit hardest than the rest of BC. If you look at globally, we've had about 1.2 degrees of warming globally. Canada's warmed about 1.7, BC about 1.9, and Kelowna is one of the warmest spots aside from Lytton in BC. So sort of one of the reasons why I like living here is because it's so warm, but in fact it's going to get warmer and warmer. And I did show you that graph, and I think
Jason, you want to put that up there?
Jason's got a graph there. And I really think it's important to situate when we talk about climate change and the need to take action with this graph.
So maybe explain that graph.
So what this graph looks at is the change in degree of temperature rolling average, that black line. So you can see that 1940 was maybe a quarter of a degree warmer than pre-industrial, but around 1980 really began to take off. And that's a 5-year rolling average.
So higher highs and higher lows.
Higher highs, higher lows, so it's getting bigger. But also, because it's a 5-year average, it's lagging. So if you look at the far right-hand side of that graph, you can see those red bars. They're already touching up to 2 degrees. So the planet has already really breached the 1.5. We haven't done it for 5 years, so no one's going to say we're at 1.5 of warning. But we breached 1.5. We're on our way to 2. We're on our way to 2.5. So when you look at the Kelowna, you say, oh, it's a pretty nice day out there. It's hot, but I can handle this. Are you going to be able to handle what happens next and after that? Right. Because it's going to get more and more intense, the heat, more and more damage. So that's why we have to do something. The other thing I wanted to mention, Jim, is when we talk about this is people say we can't afford to tackle climate change because EVs are expensive. It's expensive to put a heat pump, all this sort of stuff. I think we have to think about is we can't afford not to do it. It's really, really important that we tackle climate change, use all the technology we can to really blunt this rise. Because even if we were to stop pumping out greenhouse gases today, we're stuck at this degree of warming we have now, which is almost 2 degrees is where we're going to be. So the city of Kelowna, to their credit, recognizes this. And they've been talking about it since 2018, the first Community Climate Action Plan. It was too weak. Nothing happened. In fact, GHGs rose in the interval. 2022, they started the work on a Climate Resilient Kelowna Strategy. And they've released a draft in May. And it's going to come to council for approval and vote towards the end of August or early September. It's a very comprehensive plan. 10 key drivers, 144 actions, some of which are going to be really impactful, some of which not so impactful. What we want to see and hopefully get people to talk about what Kelowna is tackling this with seriousness, but we can do better. We can be more assertive and more aggressive. That's what we'd like to see.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that comes to education, and I think like I talk to a lot of people, and I'm a big believer in EVs and solar and all that stuff, but I think it's been politicized so much that I think there's resistance on it just on a political basis, right? Because it's like, it's like you're forcing me to drive an EV. People will drive EVs because they're cheaper, better, and faster and safer. And right now, I'll tell you right now that they are cheaper, better, faster, and safer. And I'm speaking specifically about like a Tesla Model 3 now. You can get for $40,000 brand new. And if you buy a used EV in British Columbia, there's no tax. So there's a ton of used EVs out there. And there's a ton of you could buy a brand new Tesla for $40,000. And that's a fully loaded car. So they are cheaper than the average price of a car. They're not cheaper than all cars, but they're cheaper than. And then the operating costs, and I've owned one for almost 2 years now. The maintenance is zero, right? Like there's no oil changes. There's no, and you drive an electric as well.
Correct. Yeah.
And there's no maintenance. So I think it's more about education. If we can educate people, because people will buy things based on straight economics. And I talked to you a little bit about Tony Seba. Mm-hmm. Watch him, and he'll talk to you about fleets. Businesses will change their fleets out to electric based on pure economics, right? Because electric vehicles will last 4 to 6 times longer. So obviously in a fleet, that's big costs, right? So I think we need to educate people the benefits of EV, the benefits of solar, because solar right now is almost free. Like if you do the $5,000 grant from the BC government, just enrolled it out.
Right.
There's a $5,000 grant, and then the feds have a $10,000, or no, sorry, a 10-year zero interest loan.
Right.
So you can basically trade your power bill for a solar bill, right?
Yep.
And then if everybody has power, we're seeing it in countries like Spain, where their grid usage has gone down like 10 to 15% because a lot of people are pushing solar from their homes. Texas just initiated with Tesla a plan that had that big problem in Texas with the ice thing, with their thing where they had those brownouts and blackouts.
Right.
So people that have solar on their homes are being paid to sign up to be auxiliary power if there's ever a power need, so they can pull from the batteries off the homes, right? So there's basically backup. And then the last thing I'll say before I go on is lots of people say EVs will damage the grid in British Columbia. Like they can't. If everybody had an EV, that's a political thing too. That all the EVs will destroy the grid and they won't be able to support it. Actually, the EVs could support the grid, because if EVs draw power off peak, they're storage devices, and if we can hook our vehicles V to G, it's called vehicle to grid, and if they're plugged in the daytime, and if there's peak demand, they can pull from those batteries, right? Because your car is probably a 50 to 75 watt battery, right?
77,
77 watt battery. That could power your home for 3 days. That battery would run the power off your home for 3 days. So if you can do V to G, if you could, like, there's a power failure and you plug that in, or during the daytime, if there's peak, usage, the energy Fortis or high or whatever, whoever they are, could actually pull out of the EVs, right? During peak times and fill them during off peak.
So those are excellent points. And when we put out our suggestions for the Climate Resilient Kelowna Strategy, part of it is mobilizing the community, taking voices such as yours that understand EVs so well, and also media savvy. How do we actually get the information out there? A part of our recommendations were posted on Castanet. And
you swore on this. You swore on.
Sorry, I didn't mean to use the C word.
Kidding.
I know that's a bad word.
They're a great place. Castanet's good.
But just as we were trying to get the word out, and we're very grateful for the chance to speak to you. However, the comments were all almost uniformly negative. Who can afford an EV? Only rich people can have EVs. And I'm aware of the fact that I'm a physician, so I'm actually relatively privileged that way. But people have to be able to understand. So it takes community leadership, and that's what we're asking the city to do, is to work with people like you, bring them together in an advisory group and say, how do we get the message out here that EVs are not only just as cheap, but in fact will save you money.
Yeah, because there are expensive EVs for sure. Like if you want to go buy a Ford F-150 Lightning, yes, they're expensive. But like I said, there's entry-level EVs out there, and there's more coming. Like one of the great quotes from Elon Musk is, everybody wants to drive a Tesla. They just can't afford them right now. I'm going to bring the price down. And he's done that. He's brought the price down from a Model S from $125,000. I think it's $99 today. And he's in same goes to the Model 3s. He keeps bringing the price down, and people... Obviously, the legacy automakers don't like it, right? But you've never heard of automakers actually bringing prices down on a continual basis, right? And there's so few moving parts in an EV that they can do it, though, right? There's 98% less parts in a drivetrain of an EV versus a gas car. Right. Like 98%. I
know. So the operating expenses are almost zero. You do have to get your electricity, and for your homeowner like I am, so you're getting it 15 cent kilowatt hours. If you're in an apartment, I met a young woman trying to
charge. I get mine for free from the sun.
You got your solar panels. You're even smarter than me. That's not surprising. But in any event, this poor woman, she lives in a big apartment building. They allow her to use a charger in the building 2 days out of a month. So she's got to get charging on the street in Kelowna. Right. She's got to go places. And I don't know if you ever tried to do that here. Obviously not, because you haven't had to.
Well, I did have used superchargers.
Have you used a supercharger? Yeah. Well, the ones in Kelowna are far apart, not as bad as Calgary, and not often charging at the maximum rate.
So the good news there too is Tesla. I hate keeping using that word. Yep. Tesla has opened up the supercharger network to almost every manufacturer. So I'm not sure if Hyundai it joined, but almost every one of them joined. After Ford did it first. Yeah. So I think they've given out adapters, and they're giving out adapters for free at Ford anyway.
Yeah.
And then so people can charge at the supercharger networks, and those things are so reliable. And I've tried to use some of the other ones, and they tend to be spotty. Sometimes it'll work, and they're a little clunky because you got to put an app in, you got to do all these things, and you got to get another app, and you're just like. Whereas with the Tesla one, you just pull up and plug it in and unplug it. You know what I mean? It's so easy and quick, and they're reliable and fast.
And I agree 100%. So, and Hyundai is going there in 2 years. So with the Climate Resilient Kelowna Strategy, it's very comprehensive, 144 different actions, as I mentioned, some of which are really impactful, some less so. What we want to do is talk to civil society, talk to mayor or council about maybe increasing the power of a few of the interventions. One of them associated with EVs. So of the 40% reduction in GHGs Kelowna hopes to achieve by 2040, more than a quarter is dependent upon people buying EVs. And that's really, the city's doing very little to facilitate that. Not nothing. They've made it mandatory now on all new builds to have an EV charging ready. Yeah. Well wired. So that's important. But we also have to get more chargers, I think, available in the city for those people in those apartments across the street here and other places where to retrofit and get charging cables in is very difficult.
And I think one of the key things to happen there is to demystify what that charger is. Because if you ask somebody, you phone some of these people up in town, it's like, hey, I need a EV charger. Like, oh, it's $5,000.
Yeah.
It's a dryer plug.
Yeah.
It's literally a dryer plug. Phone them up and ask for a dryer plug. and change it yourself to an EV plug. Right?
Yeah, no, you're right. So they got the little cost premium on that.
Ask them what a dryer plug is, because it's not going to be that, right? So
the CRKS, the Resilient Strategy, has got some good aspects. EV is one of them. Another really important element is getting buildings fossil fuel free. So that's a switch from a methane gas furnace to a heat pump. And it's expensive to retrofit. But what some communities, Nanaimo, Saanich, North Van have done is make it mandatory, because the province is going to make it mandatory by 2030 for all new builds to be heat pumps, electric, for the water as well as the furnace. But accelerate it. Let's do that sooner. So the Kelowna plan talks about the need to do this, but doesn't have an accelerated timeline. So this is an achievable thing. It's a little bit more expensive upfront when you buy a house with a heat pump. But man, to retrofit, to put a heat pump in is really, really expensive. So that's one aspect we want to see is around buildings that way. A third aspect we want to see is what you've just talked about is people like yourself getting the community together, getting a working group with business leaders, media personnel, say, how do we sell these moves? Because there's politics
how do we educate,
around it.
Right?
Yeah, and get people to realize that this is
cheaper, better, faster.
Yeah. It's actually, this isn't so painful. We just got to go ahead and do it. So those are sort of the big things.
There is a program, I did it with Chris Ray of the City of Kelowna. There's a program available right now. I can't remember what it's called now, HomeSmart or Jason's going to look it up right now.
Well, maybe the Energy Concierge, that one?
Yeah, that's the one where they actually will come out to your home. And I signed up just to see how it worked,
Did you
just to
sign
have
up?
some knowledge. Yeah, and then they called me and stuff. They said, you don't need us, right? You've got everything under control.
Right.
So, obviously in a home, the building envelope is a big deal. That'd be windows and just sealing it, right? So less heat, obviously, whether that's with natural gas or heat pumps. But heat pumps, there is some grants available for heat pumps as well.
Right.
But the building envelope is a big one, insulation, and that because if you're fighting against the elements, then obviously where you're heating and cooling, you can reduce your costs that way. That's one of the biggest contributors, right? It's just, heating space, right? So
heating space and then losing heat to the outside environment. So it's good that you put a plug in for that. That's that Energy Concierge, Energy Advisor. You can go on to Kelowna.ca.
What's that, Jason?
HomeEnergyNav.ca.
Yeah.
Home Energy Navigator.
So you can search that on KelownaNow's videos. I did do it with Chris Ray, former Kelowna Rocket, by the way.
I know. He's not an Oiler fan, though, so I don't.
Anyway, there's a something you can kind of just sign up. It's free.
Right.
And you can get some information, if nothing else.
Yeah, it's undersubscribed too, Chris was saying.
Yeah.
Other thing that we're trying to push is having homes solar ready. So again, you can't make people put solar, I guess, new builds, but you can have it wired so that when they put solar on, it saves them a lot of money. All you have to do is just hook your connection. So that's not that expensive on a new build, and it just facilitates adoption.
Solar's come down about 90% in the last 6-7 years. Again, for everybody out there, just search Tony Seba, and you'll see some of the predictions he made 10 years ago on solar energy. Solar right now, he said, is the cheapest form of energy ever. not now, ever. Like it's the cheapest form of energy ever, right? And he says solar can be put into place everywhere in the world, combined with battery. Even in Alaska, you just need more batteries. So there's a U curve there, like more sun, less battery, less sun, more battery, right? So again, Tesla Megapacks, they're doing power, complete utilities in Australia now, just off solar and Megapacks, right? So, and he says Megapacks will eliminate the need for substations.
That's fantastic. I mean, the engineers are going to save us actually in terms of
I think
change.
technology will save us. You know what I mean? Like technology in general, and maybe there'll be something that comes along, because they did do some like different type of solar panels that are kind of like more heat panels where they direct it at a liquid like sodium.
Right.
And those things are not competing now with solar, like just straight PV panels, right?
Photovoltaic batteries.
Yeah. So, and if you have ChatGPT at your usage, you can actually ask it some questions and say, an SMR, which is a small modular reactor, what a 1 gigawatt reactor would do versus how much solar you have to put into place and that. And you can do the cost analysis and the time to implement and the maintenance and the annual costs and all that stuff too, right?
So solar blows it out of the water of a small nuclear reactor.
So
That's good here because also you don't have the radiation damage.
Well, I mean, the small modular reactors apparently have a smaller footprint, less usage of fuel and all that other kind of stuff. But again, cheaper, better, faster is always going to win, right?
Yeah.
Cheaper, better, faster. So, you know what? We could do more on this, right? We do have a 3:30 coming in. Deadline. Is there anything else you want to just get information out there where people can go and you got a website?
We have the Kelowna Climate Coalition website. We talk about our 6 major action points to help City Hall. I think when it comes to a vote, to let the mayor and council know that you support the Climate Resilient Kelowna Strategy, but also demand more. The sort of things that, Jim, you were just talking around in terms of solar, in terms of EV readiness, in terms of getting the community mobilized. The city can and must do more because this isn't a problem, a can that we can keep kicking down the road. No. It's here now, and we have to do more about it.
I think let's educate people based on economics as opposed to a political wedge on either side. Just like forget about the politics. Let's do something that's actually better for, like, just good stewardship, right? It's good stewardship, right? Like, I mean, like what they say, don't pee in your own backyard, right? So,
exactly,
And if we can show people that it actually makes sense, right? Actually makes dollars and cents, and it makes you a better steward.
No, I agree 100%. It's a win-win, and people adopt it, but we got to get the message out.
Right? And I tell you right now, a lot of the myths out there that you've heard have been politicized about EVs light on fire.
Right.
You're going to spend hours waiting for it to charge. I mean, I was at Gallagher, like golf, and people are just like, and they started, they go on these rants about it, and I'm just sitting there, they don't know I'm driving EV, and they'll say, those things light on fire, and you can't drive it to Calgary. I'm just like, I drive it all the time.
I took our EV up to Dawson City last summer, 3,300 kilometers up to Dawson City.
So you've been driving how long now?
Well, the EV, just a year, but my wife's had a Leaf for 3 years. So we've had 4 years, I guess.
So that's the one that was a tougher one to kind of own, the Leaf, right? Because it had lower kind of range. It's great
275 range. It's a commuter car.
Right?
It's a commuter car.
So everything has a purpose, though, right?
Yeah.
If it's a commuter, great. And obviously the Ioniq is,
Great range, about 512 in the city.
Yeah, so that's great, right? So I want you to come back, though, because we can talk more, right? You know what I mean? And maybe we can help educate, people on some of the better ways to do things and some of the economic benefits from doing it, right? Just from their own wallet.
Well, that's what actually was going to sell this battle against climate change. My graphs, I can just talk all I want about how hot it's getting. People just tune out. They're not worried about the end of the world. They're worried about the end of the month making their payments.
A lot of people right now just want to be able to put food on the table. Yeah. And they want to get their kids to hockey or soccer or wherever they need to go to the doctor's office because they can't get access to enough doctors.
That's another problem.
Dr. Tom will
Next show.
I'm only kidding. That is. Next show.
That's great, Jim. Thank you very much.
That's great. And thank you for watching Kelowna Now.